The Rip City Drive.
Would you be willing to send out the number 3 pick and the necessary salary to obtain Zion Williamson? The reason why we asked the question is the breaking news report that was sent out today by Shams Charania of The Athletic.
The Pelicans are expected to aggressively pursue a top pick, potentially 2 or 3, in this upcoming NBA draft with their eyes set on Scoot Henderson, sources tell me. Henderson and Alabama's Brandon Miller are vying to potentially go number 2 to the Charlotte Hornets in the draft. Henderson worked out on Sunday in Charlotte, and Miller goes on Tuesday. Expect the Hornets to further solidify their draft board as this week closes, but the Pelicans are among teams seriously pursuing that number 2 overall pick.
All right, there's Shams. Godfather, can you help me with this? I think it's important when a report like this comes out and we're sitting there just over a week away from the draft. Why now? Who stands to gain from Shams dropping that report? And I would imagine that this report from Shams is much like we saw last week with Chris Haynes, who came out on a variety of different shows spreading information about Damian Lillard and how he definitely wanted the Trailblazers to move the number 3 pick. And if not, there would have to be a conversation. Who gains by this information getting out about the Pelicans and their desire for Scoot?
Well, just guessing, Chad, but I would think that Scoot's agent would have something to do with this. He's increasing the value of his client. They might be a little worried now that Charlotte isn't going to take him, and they've been thinking all along they're the number 2 pick. They'd like that. They'd like that for all sorts of reasons. So I think they're pushing it that Scoot's in demand, and they're subtly telling Charlotte, look, you're making a bad pick if you don't take him number 2. Teams are willing to move up to get him, and you're not going to take him. That's crazy. Or why don't you, if you don't want him, why don't you work out a deal with New Orleans? And New Orleans might be complicit in that, wanting to get that story out too, just to try and get Charlotte to be a little more amenable to making a trade.
Yeah, the difference between the number 2 spot, the number 3 spot in the draft order, over the course of the rookie scale contract, depending on how you look at it, you're going to earn about $5 million more.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Plus, I think there's even more. I think, Chad, to be number 2 in a year where Wemby's going number 1 is almost like going number 1. So I think there would be more side money available to you, endorsements, things like that, because there's going to be much more of a focus on him than the normal number 2 pick.
Okay, what are you hearing and what are your thoughts on Charlotte sitting there at number 2? They've already got LaMelo Ball. Who should you take if you're the Charlotte Hornets?
I think the talk around the league is that they would take Miller, that they don't want to screw up their supposed chemistry, if they have any, by bringing competition for LaMelo Ball onto this team. And I just don't see them doing that. They've got a point guard, and if all else is equal, I think Miller might end up being the best player anyway. He's certainly more NBA ready probably than Scoot is.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. Simply because he's so versatile. He can do a lot of things. If he doesn't make shots right away, he'll put it on the floor and score. He can score inside, outside. He can guard people. Probably a more usable player early. But who knows? We're always guessing when it comes to draft and how these guys are going to do.
All right, so would you agree that Scoot is the most desired player by the majority of teams after Wembanyama?
Yeah, I think so. I do think so. He has been all the way along. And, in general, you got to have a point guard. You can talk about any other position, but in the NBA right now, it's pretty hard to win without a good point guard. This kid looks like he might be one of the best.
All right, you've had a chance to break more tape on Scoot. What do you see that you like from Scoot Henderson?
It looks like from looking at video, it looks like he's a great decision maker. He's an outstanding passer. He's very clever in how he gets the ball to people. He sees the whole floor. He has a great idea who's going to be open. And you could even use, I think, sometimes an NFL analogy with him. He can throw people open. He can see where you are. He'll throw the ball. If you run to catch it, you'll be open. if you stay where you are, you won't be. I think he throws people open, which is a great skill, and the great point guards all have it. So I just think he's going to be terrific. He can shoot mid-range a little bit now. He's got a floater. Not good from the outside yet, although most people seem to think he's going to get there.
All right, so there's no question that if you're a Blazer fan, like you want Charlotte to take Brandon Miller, right? Because then Portland's sitting there at number 3, and that's where the mad dash for Scoot will take place. And you've got all these teams that want him, and then Cronin will have his pick of the best potential deal involving the number 3 pick.
You would assume that drafting Scoot would give you a wider range of options for trades. That there's more teams interested, the price probably higher for a point guard, and then you turn right around and ask me then why in the world would Charlotte not take him? Well, because they feel they're in a position to, draft based on need now, and so that's what they're going to do.
Well, it's the same reason why Portland wouldn't take him. They got Dame. Charlotte's got LaMelo. Don't you think it's more likely that Charlotte will take a player than trade the number 2 pick?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, me too.
They're not in a position to be trading for players now.
No.
They have a young team that's developing. Just continue to stockpile young players.
How much does Portland's position get hurt if Scoot's taken number 2?
There's going to be teams that want Miller, or they might take Miller. I would advocate taking Miller because I think he can help you, if not right away, sometime during season number 1. He's going to figure out it enough. He's going to figure it out enough to be able to help you.
All right, here's the more important question.
Chad, by the way, I'm in favor of keeping both guys. I would keep both guys because I think they're both going to be great NBA players.
Yeah. Well, that's not what they're going to do, or at least that's not what they're trying to do.
Right.
So the question is, what can you make a deal for? Now, as you have pointed out and reminded everyone that it's very hard to pull. If you're going to move number 3, you got to get a big-time player back in return. It would seem to me that Zion would fit the prototype of big-time player. Dominant force, when healthy, and can change NBA games, and clearly would change a franchise like Portland, who's in desperate need of size and someone that can dominate. Is he not that guy?
Those 2 words, when healthy. Yeah, for sure, Chad. He's a big-time player. He's an all-star. I would say, and we haven't had a long look at him, so I think he's a superstar. I think he could be a great player. If he can remain healthy through a couple of seasons, man, you got a great player on your hands. And he's also one that would sell tickets all over the league. He would make your league or make your team the kind of team they want to put on television every week.
It'd be pretty nice to make a move where you ship out the number 3. It'd probably have to be Ant and maybe Nasir to make the money work because Zion's making a ton of cash, over $30 million. But you could pull more than one player. You could get Zion, and they would have to add insurance because of his health situation. You could probably get Herb Jones. And then before you know it, you're sitting there with a defensive wing and a potential game changer in Zion.
I'll tell you what, though. You better have a really smart crew of doctors, not just one doctor, a crew of doctors.
How good is the Blazers medical staff?
Well, as far as I know, they're good. I haven't had any experience with them. A little different group than what I dealt with a few years ago, Chad. But get a team in there that really knows what they're doing, pay them whatever it takes to pay them, and find out what they think of all his meds. You can get your hands on all the MRIs, all the x-rays, everything on him that you need, height, weight, all that stuff. And that's who's really going to help you make a decision.
So if the medicals are clear and they feel confident about him moving forward, it's a no-brainer, is it not?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a no-brainer because it's still a gamble. A guy that's gotten hurt as often as he has, with injuries that have kept him out extended periods of time. This is not little ankle sprains here. This is serious injury, and he has shown that he's not real good at losing weight. This won't be an easy call. Even if the doctors say, well, it looks okay. I don't see any of these that are going to be career-ending or anything like that. You still have to stop and say, now, are we sure? Are we positive that we can get him into playing shape so that he won't continue to have these injuries? Because that's going to be the key.
That's my biggest problem with him.
Yeah.
his lack of self-control when it comes to his food intake.
Yeah.
Being fat as a superstar, letting your body go to waste, or when the team's updating everyone on Zion and where he's at, and you get these question marks, these red flags that are raised about his recuperation time, or where he's at, how the rehab process is going, how his weight management's going. I don't want red flags in that area.
But, Chad, are we in concert? Are we in concert? Are we together on this? If he is healthy, if you think you can keep him healthy, you take him.
You have to. Because he's the one player. Like, if you bring in Zion and you put him on this team, and then all of a sudden you're looking at guys like Dame, Shaden, Zion, Jeremy Grant, hopefully a replacement for Nurk. Like, that's a team that can do damage because Zion changes everything.
If healthy, he's the best player on your team. He's a better player than Dame. If he's healthy, because he can do more things, he can get you points in so many different ways. And he's just so hard to stop.
He'll make the game easier for everyone on the floor.
And he brings size. Even though he's not a big forward, but he rebounds like one. That's the thing. I mean, he's a great rebounder, great scorer inside, really solid.
Yeah, there's no question. Let's go out to the phones, 503-248-0620. Let's go out to James in Portland. James, got to ask you, would you trade the number 3 pick and the necessary salary to get Zion? What's your take?
I would. And this is the case. I would bring in Zion, have him live with Dame, and have Dame train him and with his boxing skills. Have him go with him to the gym and boxing to make him lose the weight. And live with Dame and have him, whatever cook Dame has cook for him. Make him lose the weight.
Okay, well, maybe Dame doesn't want Zion to live in his house.
I think so, yeah. He's got a few people living in his house anyway. Plus, we've already seen, I think, Chad, that idea of having a cook, a chef for Zion, that's not the whole picture.
Yeah.
As long as he's got a car and an ability to leave the house, he's going to get his candy bars and his sugary breakfast cereals, right?
Yeah, whatever he's got to do to satisfy the craving. Yeah. It blows me away. Your number one job as a professional athlete is to be in tip-top shape. And these guys getting fat. Yeah, I mean, you can't be a superstar and roll around with a boiler like that. It's crazy. Come on, Zion, step your game up. Let's go out to Michael in Lake Oswego. Michael, would you give up the number 3 and the required salary to get Zion?
I would not. I love the guy. He's a great player. I just have so much PTSD from all the injuries over the years. I mean, you know, Greg Oden was a dominant force. I got to see him play live 2 times, and he was very, very good. And he would have been tremendous had he not had his problems. I can just see Zion coming here and blowing out his knee or something else. We have bad injury karma in this city for whatever reason. I would much rather look at somebody. I called a couple weeks ago and talked about, you know, Paul George. You know, you got Ant and Nurk make $42 million a year combined. That's what Paul George makes. I don't know if we could do something like that, but I'd rather get creative and think about that than roll the dice again on somebody who's injury prone.
All right, appreciate the phone call.
You know, Chad, I just I kind of put that injury karma thing right where I put momentum, because there really isn't any such thing.
There's no connection between Zion and Greg Oden.
No.
Or Zion and Bill Walton.
Right. Entirely different front offices, entirely different team doctors. Everything's different. So don't let that affect your decision on this. This comes down to one guy, Zion Williamson. It's what you think of his health. Forget about all these other guys, because that gives you nothing. It means nothing. It's nothing whatsoever.
Let's go out to Larry in Vancouver. Larry, would you give up the number 3 and the necessary salary to get Zion?
Absolutely not. This is a guy who couldn't lose the weight and couldn't control himself when he was on a rookie deal so that he could make his big money on his next deal. They gave it to him anyhow. When's the last time, and I feel bad for him, but when's the last guy that struggled with this kind of weight, demons, whatever it is, that that improved, that lost it and kept it off. Oliver Miller, Caleb Swanigan. The list is fairly endless of guys that struggled with weight that weren't able to come back and stay at a weight that allowed them to be on the court and be productive.